There we go. Awesome. Well, my name is Karlyn Boens, and I get the privilege of being your facilitator for this campfire. I serve as the Community Restorative Justice Hubs Coordinator. And just to kind of put some of my colleagues out there, they don't have to speak right now, but we also have two other folks on who are on staff on this campfire as well. Danielle, who manages a lot of the data for the hubs, and our amazing executive director for the Institute of Public Safety and Social Justice. Elena is also on the call. Thank you all for joining us for this campfire. Well, if this is your first campfire, I want to tell you a little bit around why we even call it a campfire, right? We chose campfire because restorative justice truly is more than just policy or process. It's about gathering, it's about storytelling, and it's about relationship. All the things that happen at a campfire. So, just like a campfire truly is a place of warmth, this is our place to bring our full selves where we are met and tended with care. Just like a campfire is a place where we tend embers, those little sparkly sparks of fire that kind of come up from the fire or from the coal. Well, these are the small practices for us that keep restorative justice alive and at work. And just like a campfire is a place for reflection, this space here, the Restorative Justice Campfire, is a place where wisdom gets to be shared. It's shared across roles, across experiences, across organizations. So I'm so glad that you all are meeting us here at the campfire. And also, there's a campfire, typically a circle, right? Hi, Sharon. Thanks for joining us. So grateful that you're here. Just like a campfire is typically in a circle, well, the same is true with restorative justice circles. So each person here on this call has something valuable to add. So I'm glad we're here. Welcome to the campfire. And in this virtual space, while we might not be present physically, we can still share intentionally. We can still bring our presence and our purpose to this campfire. So thank you. That's the campfire. That's why we're here. So setting that fiery mood for you all. I want to share a little bit around who we are. The Restorative Justice Hubs, we are a community-led collective, and we do a few different things. We support one another. And the way that we do that is by transforming lives and systems by advancing restorative justice. There are 6 organizations that's a part of the Restorative Justice Hubs currently. So this is our network of community-based organizations here in Chicago neighborhoods that are most impacted by violence and systematic harms. And also supporting these 6 organizations is Adler University, the Institute on Public Safety and Social Justice, and also the resource section of the juvenile courts. So together of who we are providing a trauma-informed space, a safe space, physical safe spaces, and opportunities for reconciliation, healing, and growth. Together, we're collaborating to build stronger, healthier communities using restorative practices. Guess what, you all? We truly, truly believe that everyone deserves an opportunity to be safe and whole. And this vision is surrounded by the idea that we all are in right relationship with one another. So, even to just pause and even model a little bit of right relationship, so I want to pause here and see how you all are doing. Now that you know a little bit around who the Community Restorative Justice Hubs are, our vision of being in right relationship, I want to pause here and say, how are you? What's bringing you to this space? If you have a moment, go ahead and either unmute or share in the chat your name, your organization. Yeah, let's start there. Name and organization, maybe your role. So, name, organization, and role. Feel free to drop it in the chat.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rodney Webb. I'm a restorative justice case manager specialist in Louisville, Kentucky, and Jefferson County. I work with the Department of Juvenile Justice with kids that are straight out of probation or detainment or detention. I also work with the Court Designated Workers Office as well as the Jefferson County Juvenile Court System, and work with young people in restorative justice. I do the conferencing portion of restorative justice. I also do restorative circles. I've been in the restorative justice field for over 2 years now. I started in July of 2023 and really just been enjoying the work. So happy to connect. My colleague Kanisha, who's on here today, she shared out this opportunity with us here in Louisville, and so I shared it out with the staff in Kentucky just to continue to network, collaborate, just to learn more about restorative justice outside of the great state of Kentucky. So happy to be a part of it and looking forward to connecting with you and all the wonderful people in Chicago and beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rodney. Thanks, Kanisha. I'm so happy that you all are joining us from Kentucky. Something tells me that this relationship that we're building with you all are building with us, continues to flourish. So thanks for being here. I hope you continue to share your wisdom and the things that you're experiencing in you all's roles, and how it relates even to today's topic. So I'm grateful. Thank you, Jacqueline, for checking in, over also in Kentucky as a restorative justice case manager. So grateful to have you. Hey,
Thank
anyone?
you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to drop their org, their title in the chat, or come off of mute? Say hello. Let us know where you're calling from.
Hi, y'all. My name's Bex. It's good to see you. See so many faces here for restorative justice. Yay. I'm in West Virginia. So Rodney and Kanisha were neighbors. And it's an interesting, I'm sure for y'all as well. The Bible Belt and Appalachia specifically, I think are pretty pretty fun times when it comes to justice, restorative justice, any type of progression or change. So I'm not representing any official organization at this time, but I do a lot of work with a lot of different um, hubs, groups, people, places. So I'm just here more as my own personal individual right at this point. I'm sorry, I have two senior dogs, and one of them is she's very old and she's trying to get under the blankets. I'm sitting on my bed. I'm so sorry. Um, but yeah, I'm just so grateful to be here because as far as I'm aware, restorative justice is not something that is really actively taking place in West Virginia, and there certainly is a need for it. So um, yeah, so I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Bex. I'm glad you're here. I really appreciate you logging on and saying, hey, I want this for myself. I'm here representing myself right now, and thinking about this work. So thank you so much. I have a dog that's also like right in front of my desk right now. So at some point, she might bark out, scream out. Y'all have grace with me. Thank you all. Thank you all for checking in. We'll do a little bit more of an icebreaker in just a moment, but just to kind of share where we're going today, we're here. We are gathered around the fire. We are going to have some time to really reflect and really think about what community safety looks like. I don't know about you all, but that word safety kind of activates me a little bit, especially here in Chicago. So I want us to really unpack that specific word and think about what this looks like from a restorative justice lens. All right, so we're gathered around a fire, and then we'll have some opportunities to fuel our flames. One of our restorative justice hubs also, um, Alliance of Local Service Organizations, will be joining us. So their Safe Streets Director, Jose, will be joining us to share a little bit of their work at also and how they approach community safety from a restorative justice lens. So he'll be logging on pretty soon, but we'll get a chance to hear firsthand from him and what they're doing at their organization, Boots on the Ground. So get your questions ready. Let's engage with some good conversation with Jose. And afterwards, you'll have the opportunity to take what you're hearing from Jose and also think about how it's showing up in your organization or even in our personal lives. When we think about the acts of community care, that actually prevent harm before it even happens. So we'll have some opportunity to really bring this back to us personally and to our organizations. So that's us tending our embers. And at the end, we'll carry the torch, you all, by sharing some key takeaways, some insights, and some commitments that we want to bring forward in the work. All right. So I do come from a background where everything is collaborative. If there is something that is not on this agenda that you really hope we talk about today, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can make room for that conversation. So if there's something not on this agenda as it relates to community safety, restorative justice, organizations doing the work, feel free to drop it in the agenda and we will add it to our conversation today. So thank you all. As things come up, also know we're a small enough group, so feel free to unmute, use the chat, share out. We love all of the discussion here. All right, you all. So here we are. We're gathered around the fire. I would love for us to do a small little icebreaker activity. I want you to imagine that you are arriving at the campfire, right? Imagine we are in person, we're having a campfire, and you have a small bag. What's one item that you might carry to represent safety for you? So, what's something that you would carry in your safety bag that represents safety for you? Take this however you want, right? But I'm curious, what's that one thing you keep on you that represents safety? I created this and I still also need a moment to think. So I'm gonna take my moment to think, but I'm curious if anyone wants to share out or drop in the chat what comes up for you. So we're at a campfire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can go. For me, it's my Bible. I usually take it with me everywhere I go. And I just find myself in a lot of spaces where there's just some foolishness or just some things are happening where time can be wasted. And so, like, if I'm just going to be in the space and nothing isn't going right, I'm just going to read my Bible and stay to myself. So I think that's just me personally. I just keep it with me at all times. My car broke down on me earlier this year. And so I was riding the bus out here. It's called the TARC public transportation. And so that was just a good opportunity for me to just be in the word and to, to take some time to do some reading to kill time while I'm on the bus, and now I just take it with me everywhere I go. So yeah.
I love it. Thanks, Ronnie, for contributing that, right? I hear that. I would also have my Bible, and if not, I would have a prayer. I feel like my grandfather would really ground me in prayers that he would write down. I typically always keep something like that in my wallet. I would even have a song in my bag, right? That really calms my body, calms my spirit. What else are we thinking? What's in our safety bags, you all?
When I think of safety, I think of comfort also. So I probably just have like a cozy blanket and some fuzzy socks.
Yes.
Maybe some hot cocoa.
Right, right. I love that. I was starting to think about snacks too, because food makes us feel good and cozy and warm. So yeah, I want some of my favorite vegan snacks, aka the ones that you make, Elena.
Yeah.
What else is in our safety bag?
Y'all, so I'm sorry, my voice is kind of screwed right now, but I have my hunting knife I keep it sheathed because it's very, very sharp. But then there's a piece of tape on it because I work I do like apprenticeship with a machinist mechanic who has a shop, and so there's a razor blade taped. So when I don't need the whole knife, I just need the razor blade. Then I have access to that. But it's hunting season up here, and these things are so sharp. I mean, you never know if you need to cut rope or tree bark or whatever. It cuts through glass. I learned that accidentally, but it fell on something and sliced right through glass like butter. Yeah, yeah. And I was glad that it happened because then I realized that okay, this thing is seriously sharp, and if anybody ever requests it and I hand it to them, I say it's so sharp. Please be careful. It will cut through you. So yeah, that's mine.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. I'm loving this so far. Okay, one other person. What's in our safety bag, you all? What you carrying with you? Feel free to also use the chat too if you can't unmute. But one other person, I would love to hear what's in your safety bag.
I like to carry my e-reader around with me so I can read books and not get bored. I
Yes.
think years ago I would just like carry like several books in my bag so if I finished one I could read another. But now I
Mm-hmm.
mostly read on an e-reader.
Thank you so much, Skylar. I don't know how I forget that because my books, my e-reader, like it's definitely in my safety bag too. So I appreciate you naming that. Thank you all for sharing. What's powerful about what we named here, things like our Bible, our safety knife, our e-reader, our cozy soft things, our snacks, is that safety really does look different for each of us, right? But also that the meaning is still the same. These are items or things that ground us, that protect us, that comfort us. So, as we move into our conversation on community safety, remember that communities also carry their own safety bag, right? These are collective tools, wisdom, practices, and resources, even that help communities to stay grounded, prepared, and connected. That is probably one of the most fascinating things, side note, that I'm learning as I study organizational psychology at the bare foundation, a lot of the things that we need on a human level, organizations need and communities need. And that is the beauty of the work. So thank you all for talking about the safety bag for a little bit. Let's talk a little bit around what is safety. And we started off this conversation already by thinking about what's in our safety bag. But if we had to give a sort of somewhat well rounded definition, we can say that safety is a condition um, in which a person or a community is protected from harm. So, number one, you have that protection from harm, but they're also able to meet their physical, emotional, social, and psychological needs without fear and without instability. So, there's a lot happening in that definition. There's a lot. Actually, can I pick on somebody to maybe read that definition just out loud so that we could just kind of hear it in another voice? Could someone read that definition of safety on the screen?
The safety is a condition in which a person or community is protected from harm and able to meet their physical, emotional, social, and psychological needs without fear or instability.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want
Thank
me to
you.
go to the bottom too or no?
I got it. I got it. But I am going to put piggyback to you, Elena, and then I'm going to open it up as well. Because I think what we're seeing in this definition here is that safety includes both the absence of threats and the presence of supportive, stabilizing conditions. We can't have an absence of threat, but also not have something to feel the need with, right? Or we can't have one without the other. They both fit in. Elena, I'm curious, what comes up for you or what words stand out when you see this particular definition for safety?
In terms of which of the four that are highlighted?
Yeah, either that or wherever your mind wants to go with it. Do you feel like there's something missing from this definition? Do you feel like it's encompassing of what safety is? What's showing up? What's coming up for you? And anyone can also contribute to that question.
I have an addition. We
Yeah.
do, in one of our programs, we talk a lot about moral safety and about how nobody asks you to, like if you're asked to do something that's outside of the realm of your own personal moral code, that could lead to moral injury if you are forced in some way to go along with something that you don't want to do.
I
So
love that.
add moral safety to it as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's a great point. I'm curious for everyone else, when you hear and see this definition of safety, does it resonate? Is it what you imagine when you talk about or you think about safety?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jose. Sorry I joined you late.
You're
Hey,
good. You're
Karlyn.
good.
I think for me, what resonates is the physical and emotional safety as we're working in community violence intervention across the city. That we're keeping people safe in spaces that are defined as um, regulated by other people versus ourselves. And so I wanted to make sure that I highlight that because that's what we're doing every day is, outreach workers and peace ambassadors as we have participants out there preventing violence and wanted to just highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. And we're going to come back to you also probably in about 10-ish minutes to talk to us a little bit more about the work that also is doing in thinking about restorative justice and community safety. So that's a good teaser for what we're getting ready to get from you in a little bit. Thank you all. So really what I'm hearing based off of this definition, what Jose has shared, what Elena has added, is that we're reminded that safety really is not just physical. There's so many aspects of it, from emotional, spiritual, relational, mortal, right? Moral, that really says that we have to have room to be able to build and bring our full selves, make choices that align with our values, and exist without fear of being shamed, criminalized, or punished. Imagine a world where that exists. Couple other things that I think are interesting conversations to have, right? I think when oftentimes we think about safety, we also might think of it from a few different lenses. We get to think about it from the lens of how traditional government, even our criminal justice system or traditional justice system, have maybe viewed the idea of safety. When we think about government and how they might define safety, we might see more words like surveillance, policing, enforcement, control, punishment. And also, if we center ourselves from a restorative justice lens, but also a community safety lens, you might also hear words like prevention, connection, opportunity, healing. I'm curious for you all what shows up when you see these different buckets of words. Um, and do you sort of agree with this idea here that there are different approaches to how we might look at safety depending on where we work, the work that we do, policy lens, all of the different angles here? Safety surely in some ways have been continue to be co-opted to have different shapes and meanings. Any thoughts to that?
I definitely have thoughts. I mean, the whole idea about restorative justice or the cornerstone of restorative justice is to be in right relationship, and that it feels impossible to be in right relationship if you don't feel safe around somebody. But then the words that are used to describe governmental notions of safety are things like all of those words um, create anxiety for me, as opposed to the community safety, which creates a greater sense of ease. And so, my question would be in this sense, are the policies we make in right relationship with the communities that the government is serving? Um, and that's just kind of a good litmus test for if something is restorative or not.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that naming. You also are making me think about who gets to define safety, right? Especially even in our communities. Who's defining it? Is it folks in our community? Are we owning that word, right? And who doesn't get to define it? So then there's questions of power, there's questions of privilege, there's questions of harm. What harm get created when safety is defined outside of community or by government itself? These are really, really interesting points. I'm curious if there's any other thoughts. Bex, I see your hand kind of like,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have ADHD, so I'm medicated. I'm also autistic, as you know what. So I get excited sometimes, but accessibility, when you were saying, who has ability to name or define, a lot of it I believe comes down to accessibility and inaccessibility, so much of which is highly intentional.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we're just now getting to a place really where we're talking about accessibility, right? From a big standpoint. You would think that we would have started this conversation a long, long time ago, but you're spot on. That's really what it's nailing down to. Any other thoughts on this? Awesome. I want to share with you a little bit around how the RJ Hubs really understand safety. And a way in which I'll facilitate this is through our pillars. The community RJ Hubs, we have 5 pillars. Although all of our organizations that I talked about earlier, that's a part of the Restorative Justice Hubs, they have their own mission, their own communities, their own work. We are guided by 5 pillars that really are our practice. And for today's purposes, I want to just echo that our 5 pillars at the Community Restorative Justice Hubs are not just practices, but they're also strategies for community safety. So, for example, the very first pillar that we have as the Community Restorative Justice Hubs is radical hospitality. All 6 of our organizations offer a space where community members, families, young people can come and they are radically welcomed. Well, there is safety through that welcome. When we create spaces where people feel seen and not screened, right? There is safety in that. When we invite a radical hospitality environment, right? When we create those conditions, we're replacing judgment with warmth and dignity, right? Letting people, letting community, letting young people know that they matter, and that promotes safety. A radical hospitable place also is a place that is reducing fear by making that first contact safe and human. If everyone has a partner, a coach, a case manager, someone that they know is supporting them, there is safety in knowing that I am radically welcomed in this place. I have someone that is showing up for me and looking out for me. And ultimately, safety through welcome signals you belong here. There is space for you, right? So, our first pillar of radical hospitality is promoting safety just by the mere presence of there is a space where people feel seen, right? So, apart from radical hospitality, it's also the pillar of building relationships. The community restorative justice hubs have decided, hey, we can't just be a I see you one time and then you're gone. No, we want to build relationships with our community members, with our participants, with our families. So that means we need some safety through trust. Every good relationship has to start off with some trust, right? And we know that safety grows as trust grows. So, in this way, trust becomes prevention. And when we have good, strong relationships, we're also encouraging accountability that's rooted in care, not punishment. Alongside of this, building relationships and having that safety through trust is making room for repair, healing, and deep connection. So, those are just 2 of the ways that the Community Restorative Justice Hubs, pillars of radical hospitality and building relationships, also are grounded in safety. I want to pause here because I'm saying a lot. Any just big thoughts, big ideas showing up for you all as you look at how there's safety through the way in which we welcome people into our organizations, and we also create safety through trust.
Yeah, I think this is great. The first pillar, seeing radical hospitality. I don't know if I've ever seen those two words put together, but it definitely sounds good and it looks great. And then definitely in our lens with the work that we do, I think that's a great way to describe some of the work that we do in restorative justice, that is radical hospitality, because we treat people as people and not as a number. We know a lot of times our clients that come through the system, they're in trouble for an offense. They get charged with a crime. They have to interact with somebody in law enforcement. They have to go to the courts. They have to interact with a judge and a prosecutor. They get assigned a public defender. And then they come and interact with somebody like us, or they go through the system and experience detention and what all that brings. And then they come and get connected to us in a referral process. So I think that radical hospitality is a great way to describe our work and how we touch the people that we serve. And then just seeing like what you said, Karlyn, is that like, safety grows as trust grows, and then seeing that line there, like trust is prevention. Like I think those are powerful statements that are just like simple, but they have such a broad impact.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ronnie, for contributing that. Picking back off that radical hospitality piece, like in restorative justice work, if we're really operating from that restorative lens, hospitality has to be that first layer of safety, right? To be able to invite people in, community in, young people in, it's inviting them in a way that says, you are not a threat. You are not an outsider. You don't have to earn your belonging here. The most tangible way I give you this as an example, one of our restorative justice hubs, Precious Blood, right? The door is just open, right? Like young people are just coming through when they need to come through as a way of saying we are radically hospitable. And when young people walk up those stairs, 9 times out of 10, they're going to find a meal somewhere on that table, a snack, a meal, coffee, tea, something that says you are invited here. This is your home. So we see the power of safety even coming through the welcome. I want to talk to you all about a couple more of our pillars, and then I want to pass it over to Jose to talk about the work that they do at also. Accompaniment. That's our third pillar at the Community Restorative Justice Hubs, or for them. So what we're saying is that safety also shows up through presence, right? If we are deciding as organizations, or Bex, I'm thinking about you showing up in this training today for yourself, right? If we're saying that we want to show up to our friendships, our neighborhoods, and we want to have a presence, that means we have to commit to the accompaniment, the walk with one another, right? So safety through presence in a way that says no one is navigating crisis or systems by themselves. Everybody has a buddy. So we build safety through consistent, steady support. And from a trauma-informed lens, even an ACEs lens, we also recognize that interruption, right? That when isolation happens, there is increased vulnerability to harm. If people are in isolation, right, there is increased vulnerability to harm. The research is very clear, especially for young people. If a young adult has at least one positive adult, right, in their world, their odds of thriving shoots up. If they can identify, I have at least one positive adult who is accompanying me, who makes sure that I'm not in isolation, my odds of thriving shoots up. So accompaniment is safety through presence. And guess what? There's some relentless engagement that also happens. At the Restorative Justice Hubs, we talk about relentless engagement, meaning not only are we going to show up for youth and families again and again, but we also are knowledgeable of the systems that impact them. So we're building reliability where oftentimes the systems of trying to get food support or job support or whatever you might name, criminal justice, anything, family support, have been unpredictable, right? So to have that safety through just being consistent also aims at preventing harm over time. Okay, that's a lot. I get really excited when I talk about the pillars, but is there any other comments on these two in particular before we continue? So accompaniment, safety through presence, relentless engagement, safety through consistency. I have one more, and then we get to Jose. Awesome. All right. So our very last pillar, we talked about 4 so far. The very last pillar is learning community. The community restorative justice hubs have decided we can't keep all of our knowledge in a vacuum. We have to share it out. Do you know that there is safety through shared wisdom when we are collaborating with one another? When communities are like, hey, what's happening over there in your neighborhood? Oh, that's happening here in my neighborhood. And then they can come together to learn together, to think about the challenges, solutions, and co-create together. So creating this learning community is a pillar that we have for the community restorative justice hubs. And in that, we're promoting safety through shared wisdom. We're building a culture that really sits on reflection, adaptation, and improvement. And I think the best way of modeling learning community is honestly hearing from Jose. Jose really is serves a really important role at also as a director of Safe Streets. I want to introduce him and I want to engage in just some little Q&A with Jose for a little bit. If you all have questions or things that come up at this time, feel free to drop them in the chat. But Jose, how about we just get started by you just sharing a little bit more about who you are and how did you maybe come into this work at also?
Sure. Thank you, Karlyn, for the accolades. I appreciate them. So, born and raised in Humboldt Park, Logan Square, understanding, through time how the community changed, how it impacted me directly, how it's, continues to impact the people that we serve in the spaces that we're in. And so at 16 years old, I was involved in stuff. I went into the system at 16, came out at around 35 years old. So roughly 18 years or so. That in and of itself, and I think one of the brothers pointed out that being justice involved is a whole different impact that's happening in our community as they were basically warehousing us in systems. And I've been out for about 26 years now, going out 27. In January will be 27. And so in the community, I wanted to give it back, right? So I learned that through culture, through understanding where we came from, and then echoing that to others is one of the ways to build a relationship in community. And so I got into the CVI world because we were mentoring young people that were prone to either being victimized or becoming perpetrators. And we realized that if we did not do something about that in and of itself, that we just perpetuate the cycle and that the cycle continues. And we all know where that leads. My mom used to say that, either you're going to be dead or be in jail. She wasn't wrong, right? So that impact, right, that knowledge still flows with me today. And so I came to work at also about 3 years ago as a director for Safe Streets because I wanted to come back to Humboldt Park. I wanted to contribute my knowledge, my experience, lived experience, to everyone on my staff and then the community as a whole. And so one of the ways to do that was to use a restorative justice lens. And so all the pillars that Karlyn has referenced, that she's shown you in the screen, and the screenshots is everything that also does from the executive director all the way to the participant level. You know, we have realized that if we don't accompany our participants to their court dates, to their hospital visits, when we have victims in spaces and we're not at the hospital with them or their doctor's visits, there's a negative impact for them. And then we talk about relentless engagement. You know, outreach teams, what do? You know, they engage participants at a minimum twice a week. And most times it's more than that. And what they do is when they're talking to them, they're bringing them to the office. They're asking them, hey, why don't you come to one of our Light in the Night events in the communities that we serve? Because we want you to bring your kids. We want your grandma, your grandpa, your uncles, your aunts. Have them come out so they can eat, break bread with us, and they can have a safe space for the next 3 to 4 hours. Right? And that's what we do. That's the focus. The other biggest component, and Karlyn alluded to it, was how do we repair harm? Right? So all of us, a lot of my team has been just as involved. They grew up in the communities we serve. So they understand what harm is because either they've perpetrated harm or they were victims of harm. And so repairing harm is one of the biggest initiatives that we have, because if we don't get ourselves in a space where we're repairing the harm that we've created in the community, whether it's being involved in a group or carrying a gun, right? Or assaulting people just because they look different or they were from across the street, right? Those things matter. And so when we go to the neighborhoods, when outreach, case management, victims advocates are in the community, that's the lens that they're seeing the community from. And then safety. What does safety really look like, right? Everyone defines safety differently. You know, of course, safety has politics. And I think Karlyn's 2 slides alluded to that, right? You have government safety, right? They're seeing safety through the lens of law enforcement. Well, law enforcement created harm in our communities, right? They're seeing lens through government. Well, government's creating harm right now in our communities with these ICE raids and the immigration enforcement, right? And so then you look at the other slide, right? And you say, hey, you know, we welcome people, radical hospitality. What does that really look like in a space? You know, she talked about Precious Blood Ministries and young people just being able to walk in the door and no one's telling them, hey, what you doing here? No, they're saying, hey, you hungry? Hey, what can we do for you? What do you need from us? How can we help you? Right? And that translates for us and also into our flip participants. We have about 115 peace ambassadors. Well, they're flip participants. They mediate conflict on the blocks they live. They resolve conflicts on the blocks they live. They actually stop domestic violence issues before they happen on the blocks they live. As a result of that, Humboldt Park in 2024 had 84% decrease in victimizations in those hotspots. So what you're seeing from a restorative justice lens works. If you are in it 110, you can't be in it 30%. You have to be in it from the top down. Our executive director, she's in it, 2 feet in.
She walks with you all.
She walks with us. She canvasses with us, right? We were out there with her and our teams in K-Town at Humboldt Park, if you're aware, down Division, down North Avenue, Grand Avenue corridor, one of our underserved hotspots. We were passing out whistles and Know Your Rights flyers. That is being in community, right? So when we talk about those participants, right, they see us, they show up for us. right? Because we have been showing up for them.
Mm.
And as a result of us, right, through this restorative justice lens, showing up for them, they become outreach workers for us. They echo what we do in community, right? They're repairing harm even when we're not around. That, for me, creates the safety component that we are always talking about, right? Um, and so I just want to also highlight some of the things that we're doing. Like we have pop-ups, community pop-ups, right? And so what we do is the outreach teams and the participants tell us, hey, we have a potential conflict going on, right? We show up there for 2 hours, we feed everybody. We start having dialogue. We build relationships, right? And those relationships allow those individuals to take a second look before they pull the gun out. They say, oh, you're also, or oh, I remember you. You were at that event. And instead of pulling a gun out, they have dialogue because I think they're learning, as we encourage them to be able to agree to disagree and not have that first instinct of creating harm in spaces. I'll digress. I've said a lot. And if there's questions that I can answer, I'd love to do that.
Thank you, Jose. Please, you all share questions. Jose, you are talking about so many powerful things and so many different angles that we can even take the conversation. I'm curious, I would love to even think a little bit more as you talked about your flip participants, right? And Elena shared in the chat a little bit more about what a flip participant, who they are, people that are involved in community conflict, who get trained to do outreach and intervene in the same conflicts that they used to be a part of. What does it look like to get buy-in, right? Like, is this a model that you all also found to be easy? Is it easy to get buy-in from someone who may have previously caused harm in their community to then say, actually, let's use you right on the Safe Streets team? Like, what does that look like?
So it looks like we have, for example, individuals who have been in the system, who were impacted, right, by the violence that we remember from 20, 30 years ago, or even recently from 5 years ago. And those individuals realize that they have to do something different, right? So in order for us to create safety in spaces in our community, we have to change someone's mindset. And the only way to do that, right, is through radical hospitality, right? It's through relentless engagement. It's through accompaniment. It's through building relationships that are not one-offs, right? But that are intentional and consistent, and that we are always engaging individuals that are at the highest risk, right? And when they realize, hey, I can trust them, they are a credible messenger, they want to come in, because I can tell you right now, our young people don't want to have to look over their shoulder every day, every minute of every day. They want to be able to walk down the street and not worry about being shot at or victimized. They do, every single one of them will tell you that, right? But in order for us to get there, we have to change the way people respond to conflict. And the only way to do that is to engage them and encourage them and open those doors for them and create resources and spaces. And I'll digress.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, I'm curious, you all, what questions or thoughts are coming up as you hear Jose really talk about community safety from this particular lens, from the community violence intervention lens? What's coming up for us? By now, you should know I like big open-ended questions. Think at all.
Hi, Jose. I'm Bex. I have a question for you. And I hate to be the one, and I won't say devil's advocate because that's definitely not it. I think the way my brain works, I like to like to explore all the options and avenues. So, um, and part of this is in fact related to a local scenario here in West Virginia. But so say that we do in fact incorporate a restorative justice framework and lens, and are successful in having others agree to and participate and kind of back that as well. What happens if and when, and hopefully it's not an if or when, but I am anticipating certain individuals who have caused certain types of harms, who have been offered these types of scenarios previously, not being willing or amenable to that type of work or project. And then at the same time, which obviously is anyone's prerogative, but then at the same time continuing to do those harms and contribute to those same actions and issues that are causing major harm. So what then?
So I think your question is very impactful. Thank you for it, because it's how we start, right? So in order for you to start, you have to build a relationship with individuals that we call it LTO, right? Which is a license to operate, for example, on a block, right? That individual influences everybody around them on that particular block, right? So the person that you hire, right, is the person has to be the right fit for that block. So the person you just alluded to that's still causing the harm, you have to engage them relentlessly, right? Build that relationship and trust so that they can see the world through a different lens, right? And in order for them to see the world through a different lens, they have to be safe too. So you have to create safety for them. The reason that they're causing the harm, right, is because they have a certain mindset in community, and that's the only way they know how to process their conflict, right? That's why they go out and shoot people. That's why, we have different factors, like economics is a factor. People have to eat, they sell drugs, right? But they don't realize that they're creating harm by selling the drug. They don't know that because they're not thinking that way. They're thinking about, I need the $100. I got to feed my little brother or my daughter. Relationships matter, right? Going into the community and showing up for them matters. So having an event that allows them to come in and be themselves matters. Feeding them on the block matters, right? And then finding people that know people matters, because that's the other way. We have blocks in our community, Humboldt Park, for example, that were underserved, right? That because they were out of the mainstream groups, nobody really focused on them. But they were the ones that were causing all the harm. We pivoted. We said, you know what? We need to talk to them. We need them not to feel like we're taking sides with one group versus another. We want them to know that we're thinking about them, that we want to help them. And so through relentless engagement to showing up with events, we were able to get into there. And now we have outreach workers from those hotspots, right? And that's how you do it, right? But it's baby steps. You're not going to come in and do it all at once. And if you're thinking about coming in and trying to do it all at once, it's going to fail. It takes time to build long-lasting relationships they stay positive, and that's how we do it on our side. But that's also through a restorative justice lens. And I'll digress.
Powerful. Thank you, Jose. Really, what I'm hearing you talk about is right relationship too. It really does sound like this really is a practice of being in right relationship every day. That relentless engagement, that ability to say, I am going to partner with you. I'm going to actively pursue and really be in support. That takes trust, right? Especially where trust has been broken. And I think maybe even in a way of talking about broken trust, I'm curious, Jose, if you can maybe speak to the angle of law enforcement too. How have law enforcement maybe even harmed their credibility with community? And also, maybe it also you all have partnerships. I don't know. So I'm curious if you could speak to the law enforcement angle and what that
Sure.
means.
Thank you, Karlyn. And that's a valid point because in order for this work, right, for the team, your team to create safe spaces, um, we also have to get out of our own way, right? We can't see everyone as an enemy because if you see people as an enemy, right, are you really creating or vacating harm? Are you repairing harm when you see people as your enemy, right? Law enforcement has been right um, has been in our community and creating harm, right? Causing harm, profiling us, right? Handcuffing us, right? Hurting us, putting cases on people where they knew they were innocent, but because they wanted to get them off the street, they put a case on them, right? All those things are happening in the space, right? But we have to get past the notion of holding grudges versus holding people accountable, right? So our CVI work has a professional understanding with law enforcement. They're in their lane, we're in ours. We don't reciprocate information. In other words, we don't go in and say, hey, so and so shot so and so. We don't do those things. However, if we hear that somebody was victimized, we go and help them. And we try to help the perpetrator so that it doesn't happen again, right? That's how you deal with law enforcement. We can't stop. For example, I can't tell grandma not to call 911 if she's in harm's way, right? Because that's the only avenue she has, right, to be safe. But that doesn't mean that we should go out of our way to find a perpetrator. That's not what that means. However, what it does mean that if we understand that we have individuals in our community that are still causing harm, that we should engage them, that we should build trust with them, that we should begin to try to get them to see the world through a different lens, right? And so we're back to this whole restorative justice piece, repairing harm, creating safe spaces, accompaniment, right? Establishing credibility and trust. All the things that the pillars are doing, we should be engaging those individuals that are the ones causing harm. And so right now, for example, CP4P, we have a professional relationship with them that we ensure that, yes, there was a shooting. They may call someone and say, hey, there's a shooting over here. They do not ask us any other questions. We just go in and do what we do to try to mediate a conflict and stop retaliation. That's it. And that's how we do things in the communities that we serve. I hope I answered that.
Absolutely. Any last questions for Jose? I definitely have some closing thoughts to kind of tie this all together and a tool that I want to share with you all as you then think about how to bake this into your work. But Rodney, you came off mute.
Yeah. I wanted to, I think it pretty much pertains to the last slide, the last pillar, the learning community and collaboration, safety through shared wisdom. I just wanted to ask you a question, Jose, and for everybody in Chicago, I've learned recently about ICE pretty much infiltrating Chicago, pretty much Illinois, and they're just really hitting people in Chicago heavy. And from what I'm understanding, that it's bigger than just attacking people about immigration or whatever. Like I'm hearing about black kids being arrested and detained. I'm hearing about all different types of people being abused, having harm caused towards them. So I just wanted to see, is there anything that your organization or anything that this RJ Collective Community Hubs are doing in support of those being affected by the ICE raids in Chicago right now?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Jose, you want to talk
Yeah,
about you all's work and
yeah,
work, and then I can
I
also.
can. Yeah, I can speak to it, and then anyone else can chime in. So one of the things that we know to be true is that this government is anti, people of color, anti-immigrant, right? Um, and when they came in, we were prepared. We had already started conversations with other organizations like attorneys and immigrant organizations, and business holders, community stakeholders like businesses, small businesses, right? To be able to not only engage ICE, right, but stop them from creating harm. Now, one of the things that you were seeing, and it's true, they came in with this unconstitutional, if you will. They had no boundaries. They don't have a boundary at all, and they were giving that because they're saying, "Hey, the president told us," right? So what we did is we began to network with those individuals that we knew they were coming for, and provide safe spaces for them. Give them the information they needed, like know your rights, right? Um, Move them because we knew they were being targeted. Move them out of spaces that we knew that ICE would be aware of. We also stopped issuing flyers because what they were doing is going in our communities and reading our flyers. And they knew that if we were going to have an event at this time, that they would show up there. So we stopped doing that. And we started communicating differently. We started giving out whistles in the community. And I alluded to that earlier, but whistles, because what they were doing is coming in and they were stopping cell phone service. So you couldn't communicate, right? So we said, okay, you know what? We got something else that's better, whistles. So we have community stakeholders in cars with whistles, letting us know ICE was around. Everybody was able to get out of the way, right?
Wow. So
And
just
then
off that
those,
whistle, just off somebody blowing a whistle, that's just letting you know, hey, they're here,
Stay home.
move
Yeah.
on or get out the way.
Yeah.
that's right. That's
Okay.
right. And then the other piece to that, and I was on a call this morning. ICER is one of the organizations. They're right now trying to figure out how to come up with the money to bond people out because they caught cases, right? I'm talking about migrants, not actual American citizens, not citizens, but migrants, because now they have the ability to bond out, right? But where's the money coming from? So we have attorneys, immigration attorneys, trying to figure that out in different states, not just Chicago, because this is happening everywhere. The thing that we stress the most, and I'm sharing this because I need you to share this too, is that we were being nonviolent. We did not give them a reason to attack us. They attacked us just because they wanted to. Okay? We weren't being attacked because we were violent. We were being attacked just because they could. And that's something that you need to get to the community and let them know that, if we don't react violently, they really couldn't bring in the National Guard like they wanted to. Think about that logic. They couldn't bring them in because we didn't give them a reason to, which is what they wanted. They were trying to provoke us to do that. And so I think communication is key. Being proactive, and also knowing where the migrant communities are. For example, Little Village.
Yeah, I
Right?
can speak to that, Jose.
Yeah, go ahead, Lord. Go ahead.
We'll come back to this topic. So yeah, our organizations are spread out throughout Chicago, and many of them are in neighborhoods where there is an increased migrant population. So Jose talked about his community in Humble Park. Another one of our hubs is New Life Centers. They are located in Little Village, which also has seen over the last few years a huge migrant population. That executive director, New Life is a faith-based organization, and a couple more of our hubs are, not all of them, but some of them are faith-based. That executive director, Matt DiMatteo, actually started his own coalition of faith leaders called Faith Over Fear. I attend those meetings, a few of the other hub leaders do. So literally every single week they are on that call strategizing how to be boots on the ground. Every first Friday, they show up at one of the detention centers that is in the Chicagoland area in Broadview with faith leaders of all backgrounds, praying, getting access inside the detention centers and showing up. Where we currently are as hubs in supporting this work, addressing this work, as ICE is on their way moving on out of Chicago, we are now in a stage of, we know that type of violence does not just go away. You don't just leave a community rip families apart, and think that there is no violence in that. When you talk about trauma, there is a lasting impact that our communities are now grappling with now as ICE and the presence of federal agents leave. So now as hubs, as communities, we're thinking about how do we now get our businesses back up and going, being strong, right? Because communities were seeing folks were not coming outside. So businesses were suffering. Local restaurants, mom and pop shops, no one were visiting, right? Out of fear. So how do we now restabilize our local economies in our neighborhoods? How do we get kids back in school? Because during the 2 months or so that federal presence was here, young people were afraid to go to school or were having to be supported to and from. So how do we now restabilize that? And then, as Jose says, even when it comes to bond or getting people out of jail, how do we also support the money to support that? We can go on and on about this. I want to get back on topic, but Jose, let you go your comment, and then we'll continue. Yeah.
Real quick,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank y'all for sharing because outside of Chicago, this information isn't being relayed or transferred over. We're just hearing about just the headline and not really much of the detail. So we appreciate y'all sharing because it's not the information that y'all sharing isn't leaving Chicago. So we appreciate y'all for informing us and letting us know.
I will say we are taking some of the learnings that we're learning here in Chicago, and that Faith Over Fear group is now teaming up with a group of leaders in Charlotte, faith-based leaders specifically in Charlotte, to walk hand in hand with them. Jose, let me turn it to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Karlyn. Two things. One, I have an emergency at the office and I need to jump off and take a call.
Yes, absolutely.
Two is, Karlyn, if I share the Know Your Rights information flyer
Absolutely.
with you, can you share with everyone else?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll do that soon. I'll try to jump back on. I just know I need to take this call.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. Thank you for being here. We
Thank you.
appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Well, I'm so grateful that we got a chance to hear from Jose. And I do want to ground this back in restorative justice, community safety, and right relationships, right? There's a lot of key things that we heard Jose talk about, even in his program with Safe Streets. Number one, they build trust through lived experience, right? So when we talk about what it means to be in right relationship, this means people listen, right? Their community members are listening to one another, first of all, because they are walking similar paths and they're creating safety by saying, I know you because I've been you, right? Like you can make a great flip worker, as Jose was saying, because you know what this looks like to either have been a person who have caused harm or have been impacted by harm. Number two, their program promotes right relationship in RJ because there is consistent presence, you all, right? Jose talked about how they show up. He didn't necessarily mention this, but they show up at the funerals, at the hospitals, at the street corners, at the communities, right? At the community level. So, right relationship really does require that we show up again and again. And then they hold accountability. They hold people accountable with care, not judgment. So restorative justice accountability looks like, hey, we can be responsible and we can support each other. And in doing that, we create right relationship with one another. So all of this, the ways in which, Elena, I kind of saw you. You had something you wanted to say, or you're good?
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, I mean, this was like a real philosophical shift starting like maybe in the early 2000s, in terms of seeing people that were getting involved in street politics and conflict as the medicine rather than as the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you look at people who have that lived experience, if you add love and care to the mix with an expectation of potential for peaceful action on their part, they become part of an industry of peace rather than creating chaos in the street because there's no other choices. And I think that that is a restorative turn from the age of like super predators or like vilifying or hyper criminalizing our youth, to understanding that we need people who have been involved in street conflict to be the peacemakers and peacekeepers.
Absolutely. Yeah, what you're pointing at is that this isn't new. We've done this. This works. It's a philosophy. It's a practice. So I'm so grateful that we were able to really have this conversation. I want to leave you all with a tool, right? It's not the end all be all, but it gives you a little opportunity to start to think about what this looks like within your own organizations and within your own practice. I'm going to drop it here in the chat. It's a Word document. Save it, keep it. It's yours to have. But we're calling this the pillars of community safety. Just like I had the slides up that just talked about all of the RJ pillars, this is an opportunity for you to connect the RJ pillars to real practices within your organization that build safety, right? So let's see if I can share this document too. Let's see, pull it up here. We share this. Awesome. So what you'll see is all of the pillars that we talked about. Radical hospitality. There's a little insight there, right? That kind of tells you a little bit around what that pillar means and how it relates to safety. We talked about safety begins when we feel welcome, when we feel seen, when we feel respected. I want to encourage you to go back to your organizations and reflect on these prompts. How do people experience welcome in your space, right? We gave some tangible examples even in this of like precious blood and their doors being open. That's a way that people experience being welcomed. What practices at your organization already signal belonging, right? What barriers are there? And then you also have the opportunity to set a new goal. Take this literally back to your team and say, okay, we need a new action that's going to help us strengthen our hospitality. The same is also true for accompaniment. The same is also true for building relationships, relentless engagement, and learning community. So this just gives you a little bit of a tease for what it might look like for you to start to incorporate the restorative justice hubs, in particular, our philosophy, our mindset into your current approach, and in the work that you're already doing. This is yours to have. If we had more time, I would have invited you all into breakout rooms to explore one of those pillars, and to think about how it applies. Any questions on that tool? Let me also just double check that everyone was able to access it in the chat. We got it? Awesome. All right. I'm curious, you all, if we could just share some takeaways. What's coming up for us as we are preparing to leave in the next 10 minutes? What's coming up for you all in this workshop? Is there one thing you want to take back and continue to think about? Or maybe you're ready to implement something. Anybody want to share some takeaways?
So we have restorative circle spaces as a team monthly, and we're located all over the state of Kentucky, so it's always virtual. Um, but I'm definitely going to reflect on this because I'm trying to find ways to incorporate the philosophy into our way of being as a team, and it's been overwhelmingly challenging. Um, so I definitely think I might be able to incorporate some of these questions into our next circle, which is actually tomorrow, um, to really try to understand where the disconnect is. So thank you for the information.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. What other takeaways, aha moments? This is how we carry the torch, you all. Don't let this information just sit here.
Yeah, no, the session was great. A lot of valuable information. I think not only this can be applied to like the work of restorative justice, but like Kanisha was saying, this can be applied to just everyday life and living and how we see something in community and how like if we were to see something in our neighborhood, how we can approach it, how we can get involved, how we can try to mitigate additional harm from occurring. it also just makes me want to connect with you all and just trying to figure out, how we can find some time to visit Chicago and actually like see some of the work, not necessarily see the work in action, but like get to like actually spend time and build with you and your team and the network and just seeing, can we volunteer? Is there a way that we can participate and support and just see what that looks like in Chicago and figuring out how to bring that back to Kentucky. But love the work, love the insight and the information. Like my goodness, yeah, this was great. This was great.
Thank you, Rodney. Yes, let's connect. Let's connect. I'm here for it. One other person. What are you taking away? Anything at all?
Can I
Uh-huh.
can I go? Thank you so much. This was phenomenal. Like I didn't know what to expect. I was pretty sure it was going to be amazing, but it just completely blew everything out of the water. Thank you, everyone. And I'm thinking along the same lines as Rodney. Um, how can we kind of maybe incorporate together, work, network together, connect, continue to stay in community. Because I know for some of us who are more loners or doing, individual projects, it might be a little more difficult without having something structured. So I'm thinking like a mentorship or some type of I don't know, something. It doesn't have to be anything formal. I'm very, very informal. But I too would be up for, visiting Chicago. I have family nearby. And, doing anything and everything. I mean, I'm very flexible at a lot of, availability. And I really feel like Chicago is leading the charge with, what I have seen and read of about RJ practices. And then with today, with you and Jose's contributions, it feels like y'all have so much knowledge, wisdom, and experience to share. And I would love to be able to get a little teeny tiny piece of that to bring back home.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for really affirming the work that we do. For sure, we love, I mean, it's the learning community, right? So yes, let's connect you all if there are opportunities that we could continue to share knowledge. If you ever want to visit one of the hubs, absolutely. We love visitors, all of the things. The other thing that I'll plug, apart, you all probably have already heard about our community learning cohort that is coming up. It is predominantly for Chicago-based organizations because there are some in-person components, but I will share it here as well in case it is something that you're just like, we'll make the trip for it. Cool. But apart from that, we are going to be rolling out in the next year some consulting opportunities for if you're interested in developing a hub, right, within your community. We would love to partner. We would love to consult to help you all think about what that layout, what that build out looks like. I'm already in conversation with some folks in Kentucky. I wonder if all of this is connected. We can talk about it, but just know that is an opportunity. The other things that I will leave you with, let's stay connected. Yes, let's definitely stay connected. My email is here on the screen. I am always up for a 101. The tool that I shared in the chat with you all, if you actually want to run through that with your staff and then book some time with me to say, hey, I want to discuss this, right? That's the opportunity to practice and share knowledge. So please know that that is an option and that is available to you as well. The other thing, our last campfire of the year, you all, will be on December 18th. I'm going to drop it here in the chat. This one, you all, it's been a ride this year. So we are going to talk about rest as restorative practice. Bring your team, bring your staff. Let's talk about ways in which we are incorporating well-being and rest into our work, into our practice, and how that really is the center focus of where we need to be. We can't continue to do the good work that Jose even talked about if we are not rested and even in right relationship with our own bodies, our own mind, our own spiritual selves, our own nature. So I want to invite you all to register for that December 18th. That's going to be on a Thursday, same time, 1 to 2:30 Central Standard Time. I really, really hope to see you there. And last but not least, I shared the survey in the chat, but we always want to improve. We want to get better. And if I'm being quite honest, we want proof that this is working. So when I'm reading your surveys and I'm hearing you say that was incredible, or can you spend a little bit more time talking about that? I want to know so that we can get better and better and can continue to deliver these engaging topics to you all. Once again, my name is Karlyn Boens. It has been a privilege being your facilitator for this session. I hope to see some of you all in my email saying, hey, let's get some one-on-one time. Let's talk. But until then, you all take really good care of yourself. Practice being in right relationship and ultimately practice modeling community care and community safety in a way that really matters. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.